Hello, thanks for joining me today. My name is Christine Strobin. I am a clinical practice specialist in the Strategic Advocacy Department at AACN, and I'm really excited to be here today with you all to talk about our new Healthy Work Environment Assessment tool. So we at AACN fondly refer to the tool as HWEAT 2.0, and it really just means Healthy Work Environment Assessment Tool version 2.0. So you'll hear me refer to it as such as we move through this presentation. HWEAT 2.0 was recently released and has been redesigned to give you, we think, everything that you need to explore the health of your work environment. Also gives you the ability to identify strengths and opportunities and also to begin planning how to operationalize AACN's 6 healthy work environment standards. We will start today off with just a very brief history of the Healthy Work Environment Assessment tool so that you have a little bit of context surrounding the changes that we've made to the tool. Then we'll dive into the benefits of HWEAT 2.0. We'll learn about the role that you might play if you decide to become your hospital's point of contact or the POC. And then we'll review the process associated with creating an assessment for your team. Then we'll finish things off by reviewing what is included in your report, how to interpret your results, and how to leverage those results towards healthy work environment standard implementation. This roadmap here represents an abbreviated history of AACN's involvement with healthy work environments, really as it pertains to the development of the healthy work environment standards and the assessment tool. So as you can see, creating and sustaining a healthy work environment has really been an advocacy priority for over 20 years at AACN. It was first identified as such in 2001 and ultimately led to the creation of the Healthy Work Environment Standards in 2005. As you likely know, just by virtue of being here, the Healthy Work Environment Standards are evidence-based guidelines that really target improving interprofessional collaboration and effective leadership. They were really crafted in response to concerns over workplace culture, some severe staffing shortages that were taking place during that time, and a lot of evidence that was being published that indicated that unhealthy work environments really do contribute to ineffective delivery of care and conflict and stress among healthcare workers. So the organization knew at that time that we really needed to commit to finding a way to safeguard our profession and to protect our patients. And to do that properly, we really needed to create a way of assessing or measuring the health of the work environment. So in 2009, we decided to partner with VitalSmarts on the first version of the tool. The original tool was created to be kind of a quick and dirty screening tool to help hospital teams assess and measure the health of their work environments and to also monitor progress over time. It really wasn't until much later after the use of the tool expanded and it was used internationally, interprofessionally, and then as a research tool that we really recognized the need for a more robust tool. So after the revision of the Healthy Work Environment Standards in 2016, we went to work creating HWEAT 2.0. And based on expanded usage and feedback from our community and from researchers in the field, we knew that we needed to make an assessment tool that was more specifically focused on the 6 standards themselves. And we also needed a tool that offered greater sensitivity for a more informative analysis. HWEAT 2.0 has been updated to include now 24 web-based questions. This is compared to the 18 questions that appeared on the original tool. These new questions now reflect both unit and organizational influences on the department. And the number of questions along with the structure of each question now allows us to take a more multidisciplinary approach to enhancing our work environments. It still takes less than 15 minutes to complete, and it's still completely confidential and anonymous. In the coming slides, you'll learn a little bit more about the 2 new response scales, and you will also learn how they're used to achieve greater sensitivity and greater specificity by capturing measures of both agreement and quality. In addition to the changes that we made to the actual questions, we've also introduced 2 Likert-based response scales. The first scale measures agreement on a 6-point scale, with 1 being strongly disagree, all the way to 6, which is strongly agree. So an example of a question using this scale is, in my organization, the recognition taking place between nurses and top-level leadership is, and then you could select between one of the 6 category options. The second Likert scale measures quality, again on a 6-point scale from 1 to 6, with 1 being poor and 6 being outstanding. These questions read like this. In my work environment, or my work unit, nurses and other healthcare team members are involved in making patient care decisions. And again, you would select one of the 6 options. The next major change that is important to highlight is related to the new scoring guidelines. These new guidelines include aggregate or average scores and individual standard scores. So this is very similar to what was included in the original tool. So you can still compare past assessments to the new results, and you can still get an overall score for each standard and for each question, but now you also get a response distribution. And this allows you to combine those 2 Likert scales and gives you an idea of how many people rated each item in each category. So we'll go into what that response distribution looks like in greater detail when we interpret the results from an actual report later on in the presentation. So now that we've talked a little bit about how and why the tool was revised, let's dive into the logistics associated with setting up a survey for your department. So one thing that we do ask is that you identify a single person to be your hospital point of contact, or your POC. And all that really means is that you're willing to log onto our website, which is pictured here, and then you're going to click on the purple Start Today link under the Create a Free Assessment. This will take you to the Healthy Work Environment Assessment Tool portal, where you'll be prompted to create your assessment. Before you actually create your assessment, you can take a look at all of the materials that we have posted there. You have access to all the assessment questions and a sample report, some troubleshooting techniques, and some tips and tricks. So you can really acclimate yourself to the idea of being the point of contact. When you're ready to create your assessment, you'll just log into the same portal, and it will prompt you to create your own assessment. You will be asked to provide some very basic demographic questions, and then you'll be asked to select your survey window. This is just the amount of time that you would like your survey to run. So if you're not quite sure about that right now, that's okay. As your hospital's point of contact, you can change your survey window really at any time. So if you feel like you've had adequate responses, you're welcome to close your survey window early. If you feel like you need more time and you need to send out some reminders, you can extend your survey window. But from this portal, you also have access to an email template, which really makes it easy because you literally just copy and paste the template. It comes with a survey link that you can send out to your team, and it has all of the detailed instructions that you'll need for your team to follow in order to complete their assessment. Also includes information about your survey window. And then after your survey window closes, you just simply log back into the same portal and you download your report. We do encourage you to assess your work environment at regular intervals because this work is so important. Once you get started with it, assessing it frequently on an annual basis really just allows you to gauge your progress over time. So over the years, I have been my hospital's point of contact, and in playing this role, I've learned some great tips and tricks for improving your response rate, especially during times when there is a lot of survey fatigue. The first thing that I have found that really helps is to talk about the assessment before you send out the invitation to participate. You certainly want to give everyone an equal opportunity to participate, and by talking about it ahead of time in a huddle or in a staff meeting really helps to eliminate the chances of people thinking that it's spam when it comes to their email accounts, and it also helps to spark interest and conversation. I always think that it's really beneficial to also include the why. Every department is slightly different, so it's really important to determine what your goals are for administering the assessment and what you think can be achieved by establishing a baseline. Another thing that I found is helpful is to consider sending the survey to participants' personal email addresses. We all know how busy everybody is at work, how tricky it is to check email, and especially during a busy shift. And it always amazes me too how many people don't actually have access to their work email accounts. So this kind of eliminates that factor by sending it to their personal email accounts if you are at liberty to do so. Next, I found that giving participants the ability to take the survey during a staff meeting, a pre-shift huddle, or even before they clock out of work, if you're authorized to do that, give that permission, I found that giving nurses time to complete the survey at work really shows that you're invested in this work, and it should be paid time. Another thing that I have found is that it is a good idea to send out frequent reminders throughout the survey window. So you might choose to include these reminders in a huddle message, in your department emails, if you guys have text threads or social media accounts, or even at staff meetings. When you log into the HWEAT portal, you can keep an eye on how many respondents have completed their assessment, and you can really tailor your reminders to that number. And then finally, I found that offering incentives can sometimes be productive. The survey is obviously anonymous, but you could consider having participants either print out their confirmation page or take a screenshot of it and then turn it in to be entered into a raffle for a prize. So my team raffled off gift cards for each shift, and we were actually able to achieve an 85% response rate by promoting these prize opportunities. So definitely something to consider. So we get a lot of emails at AACN in the Healthy Work Environment mailbox about accessing your report once your survey window closes. So I thought it would be good to just kind of quickly review this and provide some screenshots that might be useful to you in the future. You are just going to enter the portal like you normally would, as you did when you created your assessment. And in that portal, you are able to change the dates of your survey window, you can end your survey, and you can download your report. Your report will be generated for you automatically when your survey window closes, and it will look like the screenshot on the left-hand side where there is that live view report link. You'll simply just click on that link and you'll have access to your report. You can also look to the right-hand side where we have the areas End Survey and Change Date circled. That is where you have the authority to end your survey early if you'd like, or change the date of your survey window. One thing I do want to note is that a report will only be generated if you have at least 5 respondents. And that's really just to protect anonymity within your department. We ask that there are a minimum number of responses before we create your report. So now the fun part, how do you go about interpreting your results once you download your benchmark report? Your report will all begin with an assessment summary score, just like the previous benchmark report did for the original tool. And you'll also receive an aggregate or a mean score for the entire assessment. The scoring guidelines have been altered just a tiny bit to reflect a 6-point scoring system to go along with our assessment distribution. But the scoring guidelines really just indicate that anything less than 3 needs improvement, 3 to 3.99 is somewhat healthy, 4 to 4.99 is moderately healthy, and anything above 5 is very healthy. Now these scores represent the overall health of the work environment, but not really where to direct your improvements. So we're going to look at that in greater detail. The assessment distribution scores, which you can see right here, then help us drill down further to see where we should focus our energy. So you'll receive a summary distribution for the overall score of your entire assessment. You'll get one for each of the 6 standards and one for each of the 24 questions. Because the Likert scales measure different things, like we mentioned earlier, they measure agreement and quality, we have bucketed the answers into what researchers and statisticians called box scoring method. So here there is a bottom 2 box, a middle 2 box, and a top 2 box. So the agreement answers of strongly disagree, and the quality answers of poor and fair are grouped together. In this example, that indicates 28% of the respondents fell into those categories. Similarly, the agreement answers slightly disagree and slightly agree, and the quality answers of good and very good have been grouped together in the middle 2 box category, and those are represented by 48% of the respondents. And then finally, the answers of agree and strongly agree, and the quality answers of excellent and outstanding represent 25% of the respondents. So now that we know how the responses are grouped, we can look at the breakdown for each of the 6 standards. And that's what this report below shows us. It shows us the overall score for each of those 6 standards. So these graphs really allow you to see pretty easily just by looking at them at a distance what your group's opportunities and strengths are. So if you look just at the dark gray or the black boxes, you can see that those, again, just as a reminder, are the 2 bottom scores. So the areas that have the greatest amount of gray or black immediately catch my eye. So we can see that 40% of the responses in effective decision making are unfavorable. We also see that 35% of the responses in skilled communication are unfavorable, and so on. So that's just one way of just looking at it immediately and seeing, okay, those are the 2 areas that we might want to focus on. It's also a really good idea to consider the aggregate score, which is on the right-hand side, and this just gives us an average response level. So here, when you're looking at it, you see that skilled communication is probably the area, the greatest opportunity for improvement because the aggregate score is the lowest. It's a 3.15. So those are just 2 ways of kind of immediately looking at your overall results and knowing kind of where to hone in on the standard. From here, it's a really great idea to drill down further by reviewing the individual questions. So let's take a look at skilled communication because it does have the lowest aggregate score and it also has the lowest number of favorable responses as well. So for skilled communication, and actually any of the standards that you're looking at, you're going to want to start your review by looking at the standard score. Here we can see that the aggregate score is 3.15. So in looking at the scoring guidelines below, we see that falls into the somewhat healthy category. Then we look at our response distribution and we see that 35% of the respondents rated this standard poorly in agreement and quality, and that only 20% rated these items favorably. Then we can look further to each question and determine how respondents rated each item to better understand where your opportunities for improvement might be. Here you might note that the individual item scores are not bucketed into top box scoring, but instead reflect 6 individual categories. And this is so that we can better see the distribution in responses. Now, without spending too much time here, if you look at any of the gray categories, which again indicate unfavorable ratings, we see that question number 2 automatically has the most gray responses at 80%. Then we also look at question number 3 and 4 because they have the lowest ratings. So these might be areas that you might want to spend time as a team diving into. But we don't want to stop just there. It's also important to take into account the aggregate score, which is listed to the right-hand side. So when we look at this, we see that question number 2 again pops up and has a score of 2.80, which actually falls into the needs improvement category. So by looking at it in both ways, we see that question number 2 is probably the area that we want to spend most of our time looking at as a team. So to put it all together, it's first important to identify the standard with the highest level of unfavorable responses, while also paying attention to the aggregate score. Review the individual question items in that standard section using the same thought process, then identify the lowest scoring question or questions, and then finally engage a group discussion to determine what these questions mean to your group and how you want to prioritize project work. From there, be sure to leverage your CSI team and faculty to learn the best way to engage a team approach. Decide as a group what standard you think is most important to your department culture, then identify and learn about the change management tools and methodologies that will help guide your work. After that, it'll be time to plan your project kickoff, which is super fun. You can create so much excitement. You can promote giveaways and handouts. It's a really, really fun time. Also, try not to forget that nothing is perfect the first time around. Try to continue innovating and tweaking your projects, and also take comfort in the fact that change does not happen overnight. I've always found that it is really important to measure progress over time so that you can see how far you've truly come and use that progress to fuel your momentum. And above all, I think the most important thing is to celebrate those small wins along the way. This work can be really hard, but it's incredibly meaningful and so fulfilling. So we at AACN wish you all the best of luck with your project work, and thank you so much for joining us today. If you are looking for additional resources or wanting to learn more about how to transform your work environment using the Healthy Work Environment standards, be sure to check out all of these links here.